incidents of the federal system that a single courageous state may, if its citizens choose, serve as a laboratory and try novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country. Now, Harvey was telling us earlier that Rule 14a8 is great and not a problem and peachy. I'm not sure what your exact choice of words were.
Well, that's all right.
But nevertheless, Leo disagrees with that. I'm not sure what pizza against the wall means in any case, but I have serious reservations about whether 14a8 is a game that's worth playing. Well, if we had that rule at the state level, states that thought it was not a good idea could opt out, and we could compare. California has one. I'm almost certain California would. Delaware, I'm pretty sure, wouldn't. We could compare and see whether or not it was beneficial. Once you move these sort of things, either entirely as a federal corporate law or piecemeal to the federal level, once they go to the federal level, it's written in stone. When was the last time Congress went back and revisited securities litigation to fix things? Take something as basic as the 10-day window under Section 13D of the Williams Act that says that you have 10 days from the time you cross the 5% threshold to file your Schedule 13D. We've known since 1987, when I was involved in congressional debate over reforms to the Williams Act, that the 10-day window was too long, that it needed to be closed, and that emerging information technology that far back made it possible to close that window. Today, there's no reason in our current state of information technology to have a 10-day window. But Congress has never gone back and fixed something as simple to fix as that. When does the SEC repealed a rule that was out of date? Well, there are probably a few examples. But once these things happen at the federal level, there is no longer competition, and there is no longer any reason to adapt to changed circumstances. Indeed, a related advantage is that when you incorporate at the state level, you have the option of exit. If one state becomes too onerous in its regulations, you can exit, you can leave, you can go to another state and reincorporate there. That option is not available as we increasingly federalize corporate law. Your only option would be to leave the United States and incorporate somewhere else. And while we may not observe American firms doing that, I would point out to you that we are observing foreign firms leaving the United States, deregistering, in the wake of Sarbanes-Oxley at an enormously high rate. We are also, in the wake of Sarbanes-Oxley, seeing American firms going dark so as to avoid Sarbanes-Oxley. I gave a talk a couple of years ago at the Hoover Institute on sort of Sarbanes-Oxley and the cost benefits, and I tried to be very balanced and say, well, there are probably benefits that are hard to quantify, and I think there probably are. And here are all the costs. And I was the last speaker before lunch, and I came off just keeping an eye on my time here. I came off the bench, or off the lectern rather, and these four guys came up and grabbed me, and they said, we have to have lunch with you. I'm like, okay. It's pretty rare that anyone's that enthusiastic about having a meal with me, so I was sort of pleasantly surprised. It turns out that these four guys were all CEOs of microcaps. They all happen to be in the auto supply business. And they are all in a very precarious financial situation because they're all unionized. So they have these gold-plated UAW employment contracts. And they're all suppliers for GM, Ford, and so on. And as you may know, GM, Ford, and Chrysler have been really putting the screws to their suppliers in terms of cost cutting. And so these are guys who are operating on incredibly thin margins. And they're telling me that Sarbanes-Oxley compliance costs they were looking at if they had to comply with 404 would be, as much as a third of their profits. Now, I find that number hard to believe, but they swore it was true. And it is certainly true that we know that the costs of Sarbanes-Oxley have been disproportionately high on small firms. And Harvey says, well, the cost of an advisory proposal would be relatively modest. Or advisory vote on shareholder, advisory vote by shareholders on executive compensation would be relatively modest. And that is probably true. But that's how you get the death by 1,000 cuts. You keep saying, well, this change is modest, and this change is modest, and this change is modest, and the totality isn't.